So you guys may be wondering why, since the patch, the only class that I haven't come out with a build with is the Revenant. And mainly the reason for that is that there really isn't much creativity for theory crafting with the Revenant class, because there's only like 5 sets of utilities and they all have the same utilities. There's not really much that you can do with it. But also because when I try to create a build that's kind of off meta, I do so because it's interesting or a fun variant on how to play the game. For Revenant though, the most fun way to play the game, in my opinion, is the most meta build. This is the Power Herald. Since it came out in Heart of Thorns, this has probably been the most overpowered build that has ever existed. Now, obviously a lot of people are going to say, oh, but Revenant is really balanced now, it's very easily focused. And yeah, that's true. I think that Revenant right now is a very fun and skillful class. However, when a good player gets on the Revenant class, they can abuse it very heavily in matchmaking. And yeah, I'll show you guys later how rotating well on a Revenant allows you to really take hold of each match. But anyways, I'll talk about the build. So this build has been, it's changed over time. There's a lot of different variations, but what I'm using right now is the Berserker Amulet with Resistance Rune. Berserk Ami is just really good with Herald because you have Draconic Fortitude to make up for the loss of health from Marauders that you usually would use. And Rune of Resistance is a lot of defense that you get from not having that from the Marauder Amulet. So like, say you're getting countered by conditions, right? It's a pretty hard counter to Revenants. Well, Resistance Rune helps to shore up that vulnerability because it reduces all the condition duration that you take, but also it allows you to gain resistance for 4 seconds whenever you activate an elite skill. And combined with the Facet of Chaos, that can be an instant cast skill. So it's pretty much on-demand resistance so long as you're in glint stance. And it's just really strong because, kind of like your heal skill, it allows you to play very aggressively, and that's kind of like the theme of this build. I take exposure and courage on my sword, and energy cleansing on the staff. So basically, exposure has a lot of synergy with the devastation trait line, and so does courage, so I just take that. It's the best damage dealing. You could take exploitation instead of courage, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Energy cleansing obviously on staff because that's a utility weapon for the most part, and you use it to kite a lot of times, so energy and cleansing just works out that way. The traits, so invocation and devastation are pretty much the most aggressive trait lines you can go. So yeah, this is what you want to do to maximize your damage. So I take cleansing channel because obviously conditions are a hard counter to revenants. So yeah, you wanna have as much content cleanse as possible. Obviously, I just said that you want to go as aggressive as possible, but there are some concessions that you have to make, and this is a pretty good one to make. Also, you have increased damage while you have Fury on you. You're gonna have plenty of Fury because whenever you invoke a legend, you gain Fury and also Facet of Darkness. So, Rapid Flow gives you a swiftness every 5 seconds for 5 seconds. So you've pretty much got permanent swiftness on this build, and that's really good because you need to be fast to stick to your target. But also it gives you a little bit of a healing every time this procs, so that just helps you to sustain in situations where you're not able to hit the enemy. Spirit Boon doesn't really give you that much, and Incense Might has a little bit too much of a nerf on it since the recent balance patch. So I like Rapid Flow. Contain Temper, yeah, you just gain a lot more Fury, not that important. Song of the Mists is a really good trait because it allows you to play very aggressively with your energy. So how Revenant's mechanic works is whenever you use a skill, it'll cost energy. They all have a cooldown of their own, but they also have an energy cost. So you have to manage your cooldowns and your energy at the same time. So that makes Revenant like one of the more difficult classes to play. But what you want to do is whenever you swap your legend stance, you usually want to have like a huge power spike, because you gain, like whenever you swap, right, you're going to gain all your energy back. So as you can see here, I swap, I get back to 50 energy. And at this point in time, you're also going to gain quickness whenever you swap into Shiro, and you're going to gain a chill whenever you swap to Glint. And chill helps you stick to your target, and quickness helps you be very aggressive and do combos. So when you get these power spikes, you're also getting like a supplement to your power spike, because sticking to the target or being able to do your combos faster is just really good. And the timing of it, when you've got full energy again, or at least half energy, it's just really good. So it does like a small attack whenever you legend swap, and yeah, if it hits, it'll give you that effect. So you want to try to land it, but it's kind of easy to do because legend swapping is an instant cast. So in Devastation, you have exposed defenses. Your first attack applies 5 vuln to the target, and whenever you use an elite skill, you will refresh this. So Jade Winds gives 10 vuln whenever you hit, and it'll also recharge exposed defenses, so you can get like 15 vuln. It's a lot of vuln, but in Glint, whenever you use exposed defenses, and then use your elite, it'll recharge it, and then there's 2 casts. So as you can see here, I can hit, exposed defenses goes away, then I use facet, exposed defenses happens again, and then I use the elite again, you get a 3rd exposed defenses. So you can do a lot of vulnerability with this build. And as you can see here, vulnerability is 1.5 times stronger. So every time you give 1 vuln, you're basically getting 1.5 damage bonus. So at 25 stacks, that's like 37% damage increase, which is really strong because you can get to that amount of stacks very easily. Next, I have aggressive agility. This is, honestly, you could take unsuspecting strikes too, because this is very conditional. My reasoning for taking it is because the moments where you get immobilized, those can be very, they can get you killed, and that can often be like game throwing to die in a lot of situations. So I like to have the ability to use a movement skill to remove immob, which allows you to, survive and be, a little bit more slippery. And you have a lot of movement skills actually. So Death Strike, Unrelenting Assault, you have your Staff 5 is also a movement skill. You have Shiro Port is a movement skill, and then this already removes Immobilize. So this kind of like makes you immune to Immobilize in a way. Obviously, there are a lot of moments where you won't have one of your skills up and you get immobilized too, but I think that the times that it does save you is probably worth it. However, unsuspecting strikes is almost always good, right? Because if a target is above 80% health, you will do 10% more damage to them. And 80% health is a pretty common threshold for the enemy to be above. So I think that this is pretty good too. It's pretty reliable, but it's just a damage increase. Obviously, the role of Revenant is to finish off and focus targets, so it doesn't really help you in the situations that you're ideal in, right? Because if you're focusing a target, they're probably lower than 80% health. So, in my opinion, while it is more useful in more situations, or not more useful, but useful in more situations, those situations are not really the situation that you're ideally playing to. And aggressive agility isn't really the situations you're playing to either, but it allows you to survive long enough to get to those situations that you want to be to. So if that kind of makes sense, that's why I chose this. But this is still fine. So damage increase for each weapon you're currently wielding, so it just makes your sword do more damage. Notoriety. So notoriety and assassin's presence I think are both really good as well. So like you could choose these two or you could choose these two. But I like notoriety because it gives you damage over time and allows you to kind of be a heavy DPS. Whereas Assassin's Presence, yeah, it gives you Ferocity, which kind of fills the same role. But Ferocity only affects your crits, and while you do have quite a bit of crit because you'll have Fury, which means you have 67% crit chance, you are using Berserk Ammi, so a lot of the time, you know, you're not that high on crit chance. Like 67% isn't amazing. So I do feel like a lot of the time notoriety is probably better because it's affecting all of your attacks to have might. And yeah, also you're gonna have Sigil of Courage, right? So you're getting more might and your might is stronger. So normally might is 30 power per. With this trait you get 40 power per might. So if you have 25 stacks of might, you're gonna get 25 times 10 more power. So that's 250 power at 25 stacks of might over what you already had. So that's pretty strong. So yeah, I like notoriety, but you can take Assassin's Presence too. So as we have already seen, targeted destruction gives you more damage per vuln. There's a lot of vuln in this build. So Dance of Death is the Grandmaster that I take. And I know a lot of Revenant players don't like this Grandmaster, but I think that that's because they don't really know the potential of it. So most people take Swift Termination, which is just 50%, while they're below 50% HP, you do 20% more damage. And that is really good, mind you, that's really good. But in this situation of like plus oneing a target that's below 50% HP, the 20% damage is going to really help you finish that off. But that's not the only situation that you're going to be in. And Brutality, while the quickness is nice, it kind of changes your playstyle to like want to do omega damage right after you weapon swap, which can be predictable. So it just isn't as flexible as I'd like it to be, because you don't always want to use all your damage as soon as you weapon swap. So Dance of Death, what does that do? Applying Vuln to foes grants stacks of battle scars, and the healing of battle scars is increased while you're below the health threshold. So 50% HP, if you're pressured, you're probably going to want this battle increase, right? So I think it's pretty good for sustaining in team fights. But also battle scars gives you like 60 60 life siphon damage and like 60 healing per battle scars. Now the other battle scars traits in here, in my opinion, are very bad, because one battle scar per second is just not enough to even make a difference, and 5 on heal is not really that much either. So I don't really like that much. However, Dance of Death gives you battle scars for each stack of vulnerability that you give. So there's actually a lot of ways to give vulnerability as Revenant. So Facet of Darkness, when you cast this, gives 10 vuln. So right there I hit 3 targets, was that? That gave me 25 stacks. The maximum stacks of battle scars is 25. And I just hit 3 targets with one ability and got maximum stacks right there. So there's a lot of ways to get vuln on Revenant, right? So like exposed defenses. So whenever you start a fight, you'll immediately have 5 stacks of battle scars. Then you can use Facet of Chaos, right, and get even more. And then use it again and get even more. Then you use your Facet of Darkness, you get even more. Your Sword 4 gives 12 vuln. So if I'm hitting multiple targets with all of this is AoE, right? So it's giving me tons of stacks while also using the stacks at the same time. Obviously, there's probably an ICD on it of like a half a second or maybe a quarter second. So it's not going to proc them all at the same time, but it's really good. You'll also get Vuln from, I think, swapping into Shiro. Yeah, swapping into Shiro gives you 8 Vuln, so that's also AoE. So that's 8 stacks of Battle Scars. And then obviously we already talked about Jade Winds giving 10, so you can get max stacks from that. And then obviously your exposed defenses starts again. You just get tons of vulnerability in this build. And often in team fights, you're hitting multiple targets a lot of the time. So you're using up those stacks very quickly. And this gives you a ton of sustain in team fights and allows you to just stay in those fights without having to blow any of your cooldowns in a low value manner. It allows you to stick to your target very aggressively because you kind of like shrug off counter pressure. And yeah, it just fits the playstyle of the build better because you can play so aggressively while having sustain at the same time. Because all you're doing to get your sustain with this build is just adding Vuln, which is part of your normal rotation. So it's not like Brutality where you have to like change your playstyle a little bit. And it's not like Swift Termination where, yeah, it's good in team fights for focusing targets, but if like they're getting supported, then you're getting no value from that trait. And they're like above 50% for a while. It doesn't really help you get them below 50%. It just helps you finish them off. So this helps you at all times. So it's always useful. And it gives you a ton of sustain, especially in situations where you need it, right? Because it gives you a 100% increase when you're below 50% HP. So you're getting like 100 healing per stack that you use. So yeah, it's a really good trait in my opinion and way undervalued. So yeah, there is that. Let's go to Herald. Let's talk about Herald. So in Herald, you gain the F2, which when you have, that's another facet. When you have that channeled, you will gain an effect based on what stance you're in. So when you're in Glint, you'll gain more boon duration. And when you're in Shiro, you will gain lifesteal and give this to your allies as well. And then when you use it, when you consume the facet, it'll do an effect. So in Glint, it'll just increase the duration of the boons you have. But normally you'll want to be using this in Shiro because it does a 700 base damage AoE triple boon rip with the core value trait because it's baseline 2 boon rips. So 3 boon rip on 20-second cooldown with unblockable AoE is just insane. And also because of Draconic Echo, your facet passives affect additional targets and you retain them for a duration after their consume abilities. So you can use this off cooldown, and what will happen is, as you can see here, I have Facet of Nature Assassin, and I'll show you guys the damage that I'm doing with this build. So combat. So if you look here, I'm getting like Facet of Nature Assassin 200 lifesteal. So 200 lifesteal is actually pretty decent. Obviously I'm getting battle scars as well on top of that, but you gain a lot of sustain from lifestealing because of that, and you'll gain this even if you cast True Nature. So as you can see here, I cast it and I'm still gaining Facet of Nature Assassin, right, because of Draconic Echo. So Draconic Echo is insane for Herald because of that. And also Draconic Echo is just really good because when you go into your Glint stance, a lot of times you don't want to be channeling all of your facets because they drain your energy. And the whole purpose of Herald stance is that your facets don't have any cast to consume them. So you can use a lot of your skills, and in Glint you have so much energy to freely use because you don't have to really use up your energy. So you have a lot of energy to spend on your weapon skills in Glint. And what that means is you'll be casting out your facets, but you'll still be channeling them because of Draconic Echo, which means you'll be giving out boons to your allies. So like you can be constantly gaining might even after you use Facet of Strength. And it just allows you to be aggressive while also gaining sustain at the same time. Same thing with Facet of Light. You want to use your heal skill to gain regen, but you don't want to be saving it and taking damage unnecessarily. You want to use it aggressively to convert damage into healing. So after you use it, you'll still be gaining regeneration for, you know, what is it? 6 seconds after. So yeah, that's 6 more seconds of regen, which is, you know, every time it ticks, it's giving you 500 healing in regen. So it's a lot of sustain. So yeah, Draconic Echo is insane for, I keep saying insane, but it is. I think people really underestimate how good it is. So yeah, I would not go for Forceful Persistence, because this is another thing, as I mentioned earlier, where it changes your playstyle. Because as you can see here, you deal increased damage when you have active upkeep skills. So basically you want to be doing more damage while you have your facets up, and that means you're going to be draining your energy, which means you're not going to be able to do as much damage because you're going to be draining yourself of energy. You can't spam all your abilities. So yeah, the playstyle of this build is actually to just use your abilities very aggressively off cooldown, really, pretty much. And Draconic Echo gives you value for playing very spammy, which, I mean, yeah, maybe that's not the most, you know, skillful way to play, but it is definitely the best way. So, or sorry, it may be not the most punishing way to play, right? But yeah, and then I take Shared Empowerment because Draconic Echo means that you're going to be applying boons pretty much constantly, so you're going to get this sharing of might to your allies almost permanently. So you're basically pulsing might to your allies at all times, which is like, you know, 4 might that you'll be giving out at all times, which is, you know, to you it's going to be a permanent 4 might, which is 100 and what is it, 60 power, and then to your allies it'd be giving them 120. So I mean, it adds up over time, so it's just really good in my opinion. Shining Aspects, this is also very good in my opinion. Like, it sounds like it's not that good, but basically if you just spam out all of your facets every time you go into Glint, that's 2,000-ish healing, so it can add up and give you a lot of sustain. But I think Shared Empowerment is too much potential for your team, right? Like in team fights, you're giving out might to your allies, so yeah, it's just really good. So yeah, that's the traits and the build. Let's talk about the skill usage. So Revenant is a very high skill class, and utilizing all of your skill ranges in the most effective way requires really good positioning. So let's go over the facets. So Facet of Darkness is a stun break that gives blind and 10 vuln and reveals targets. So if you're fighting something that's in stealth, they have to be in stealth for you to reveal them. So you can't cast it before they stealth, you need to do it after. So on thieves, what you want to do is play very aggressively and just wait till they go in stealth and immediately reveal them. It has a very wide radius of 600, so like right here, that would reveal a thief all the way over there. So it's a very wide range, and I think that should actually be reduced because it's a little bit too easy to land. But yeah, it's very easy to reveal things, and you often want to use that aggressively. The blind on it is also really good because it's an instant cast, so a lot of times like you'll be using your sword 3, and the end of the animation is actually very scary to you because they can precast like a CC into it and you can't really do much about it. So what you'll do is you'll precast the blind into the end of your animation of sword 3, and it'll cover you up and make sure you don't get CC'd there. So yeah, that's another really nice trick. Facet of Strength, this gives you a really strong attack. It does like 2 hits in front of you with a pretty wide radius in front of you. It's 600 radius. So, and it's kind of like a cone, so it's really strong for cleaving down bodies because you can do it from quite a far distance, right? And like this, so it's really good. and it'll obviously be pulsing out might after you use it still, so it's always good to just have this up and then to cast it. And then Facet of Elements is really good because it's kind of like the best down state cleave you have on Revenant, because it's a very fast cast, so you put little investment into the skill and you get lots of damage out of it eventually. So you want to put this out immediately. The first tick will give out weakness for 2 seconds, so it's really good for like against thieves to get, you know, weakness on them to counter pressure. And then it'll put chill for 3 seconds, and then 3 stacks of burning. With a power build, this 3 stacks of burning is still going to add up to quite a bit of damage. So as you can see there, it did like 1,000 damage just from, you know, burning. And obviously it hits for quite a bit on the power side as well. So yeah, just putting that in areas to like deny them, it's like area denial. It's very good, and it baits out a lot of dodges because no one wants to stand in a Facet of Elements. It adds up to too much damage over time. So it's very good at putting on top of yourself as well, because if you put it on top of yourself, you can counter pressure them, and if they decide to trade with you, then they're eating the whole Facet of Elements. So yeah, it's really good. Using Facet of Elements off cooldown isn't necessarily the best play though. I know a lot of Revenants do that because it's such a high value skill, but very good Revenants will use it to get the most value out of the area denial, right? So what they'll do is they'll kind of like be ready to land their burst, and then they'll use Facet of Elements because they know that, I mean, like a really good player is going to play around Facet of Elements, right? So what, you know, you can do to counterplay the counterplay to it is kind of like bait out a dodge, and then they'll dodge out, and then you can land your immobilize into burst right after that, or something like that. Also, if you land a really big CC on someone, then you can put the Facet of Elements on them because they don't really have a choice to move out of it. So yeah, it's just really good. Facet of Chaos. Now, this is a very costly facet to channel, but the protection that it gives you is very good because, as I said before, you know, this is a very squishy build, so getting protection is a very strong boon. Like, it's one of the stronger boons in the game, and it's been nerfed in duration on a lot of classes, but this skill kind of makes it very easily accessible, and that's why it's so strong. And obviously, if you use Draconic Echo, right, you'd still be getting, if you use the Consume because of Draconic Echo, you'd still get the protection afterwards. So a lot of times you do want to just use the Consume effect, which is really strong, but just to get the prod uptime. And the Consume for this is an interesting skill. It gives you like a dragon effect in front of you, and what you can do is you can stow it like I just did, and a lot of times this baits out dodges, because if you get hit by this, even though it doesn't do that much damage because it's a CC, it does a really nice launch knockback. And yeah, it sets up a lot of combos because, you know, it's a CC. So what you want to do with it a lot of times, you don't want to be sitting in it baiting for too long because you do lose a lot of energy, but obviously in Herald you're not really needing to use that much energy because all of your consumes cost nothing. But yeah, you do want to maybe bait it out a little bit if you're at the start of a fight, so that you don't waste it first of all. And then what you can do is, so like maybe you bait it and then you go in right after they dodge the bait, and then go for another attack right after that, and then maybe they'll waste a lot of their cooldowns, and then you can go for it again, and then once you've done that, you know, you could probably swap to Shiro and then do a massive burst. So yeah, that's how I like to use Facet of Chaos. Another thing is, while it's casting, it's kind of like a cone in front of you, but the cone changes to where your positioning is. So a lot of times you can pretend like you're going in one direction and then end up using it behind you. So like say I'm being chased in this direction by this golem, right? And I'm kiting in this direction. What I can do is I can cast it and then turn around immediately and hit them back. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility on that skill because of that, and that makes it kind of hard to play around, because say for example, you're chasing a revenant who's using that skill, you're forced to dodge no matter what, because you never know when they're going to turn around and use it on you. So no matter what direction you are near the revenant, it kind of just forces people to, dodge. So yeah, it's a really strong skill. Next we have the Shiro stance. So Shiro has very costly skills as opposed to Glint. So when you're in Shiro, you often don't want to be using a lot of your weapon skills. You want to be using those in Glint. And obviously in Staff you want to be in Glint too, because Staff has very costly skills. So yeah, in Shiro you want to be in Sword, and generally using like Sword 2, maybe Sword 3. Sword 4 and Sword 5 maybe not the best things to do in Shiro, because they're kind of costly. And you already have phase traversal, which is a port. So yeah, so the heal skill is just going to give you life siphoning. You just want to use this aggressively. If you're low on HP and you use this, it doesn't really help you to resustain. You kind of need to use it to top yourself off while you're already being aggressive. So yeah, just use this generally off cooldown, I feel like. If you're full HP, then yeah, maybe don't use it, but like if you're like 70 HP, use it to top yourself off. And then Riposting Shadows, it gives you Fury, and it gives you a dodge for 40 energy, which is really expensive, and a stun break. So this skill is no cooldown, by the way. So if you pool your energy, which is essentially just not using any energy for the purpose of gaining it for later usage, you can often be very survivable, right? Because you can use this twice in a row, and it gives you 15 endurance as well. So you can chain dodges, but oftentimes you're not in a situation where you can use that twice, because you start with 50 energy, and that would be a lot of time just using nothing. So a lot of times you're very vulnerable in Shiro stance, because you don't have that many defensive cooldowns. So you do want to be very careful on your usage of Riposting Shadows, because after you do use it, people know, hey, he's out of energy now. So you oftentimes, if you're under pressure, you sometimes want to just tank damage instead of dodging it, because if you immediately dodge the first thing they use on you, then they'll use their bigger attack on you right after. So you really want to just save this for when you really need it. And then obviously removing Immobilize is really good, because it helps you to not get focused. Phase Traversal, this skill is very broken. It's a 1200 range port to a target, and it will give that target like a 500 damage attack, right, which is pretty decent. And it'll give you 2 unblockable attacks right after, give you quickness, and obviously it'll remove Immobilize from you because of aggressive agility. So this skill pretty much sets up all of your combos. So when you're in a fight and you want to focus a target, you just swap to Shiro, maybe pool a little bit of energy, because it costs 35 energy. So after you use it, you'd be at like 15 energy. So the only thing you can really do is Unrelenting Assault, Sword 2, and then you're pretty much out of energy. So oftentimes you can be very vulnerable when using Phase Traversal. So you don't want to use it too much, like off cooldown. But yeah, it's kind of like a steal for Thief, right? Like when you want to steal on a Thief is kind of like when you want to Phase Traversal on a Rev. So yeah, that's pretty important. And then obviously Facet of Nature is a really good thing to use after Phase Traversal, because that's sort of like a steal, because this rips boons and it gives you quickness, and then you can do a combo like this and then do big damage. So yeah, Phase Traversal is really good. You can also use it to disengage from fights. So like if your team calls target for you at like mid and you're at far or something and you're outnumbered and you're like, oh, well, I gotta get out of here. So you get the target at mid, and then you port out, and then you're safe. And then you're already +1ing another fight because you've ported in and you've got quickness. And it just allows you to kind of like create the outnumbered situations to snowball kills very easily. So yeah, this is one of the key abilities to use on Revenant. Next you have Impossible Odds. This skill isn't amazing to use because it really has no functionality. It really only deals damage. But it is still very good and very costly at the same time. So it gives you a 5 energy cost to even cast it, and then it's 8 energy degeneration. So yeah, you're losing pretty much all of your energy pips when this is up. So the only time you really want to use Impossible Odds is when you're doing a skill chain at the end of your Shiro stance. So like, say your glint stance is about to come off cooldown. You want to use Impossible Odds to kind of like deplete all of your energy, because you're going to swap into glint anyways and get all your energy back. So this is really good because while it is costly, that cost is over time. So you can use it for a short amount of time just to use up your last bits of energy. So what you can do is, say you're about to like use up all your energy, and it's going to be hard to do so. And then like, yeah, I use up the last bits with my, Impossible Odds, and then I swap. And now that allows me to get the value of every last little energy pip and then swap. And it gives you a decent amount of damage. So like, I think it's like it's a quarter second ICD, and it just gives you an extra attack, which is really nice for really quick attacks like Unrelenting Assault. It'll make them do extra damage because they hit so quickly. Yeah, it's very good, but very costly, so you don't want to be spamming this out. That's pretty much it. The Jade Winds is a really strong but really costly ability once again. 50 energy, so if you use this as soon as you swap into Shiro, it's very dangerous because you'd have no energy then. But it is a 3-second stun in an AoE. So in team fights, if you land this on their whole team, you can pretty much delete their whole team, because 3 seconds, that's a really long time. And it's 10 vol and then exposed defenses. Yeah, you want to be careful when you use this. You don't want to be spamming it out. But say you're in a situation where you're waiting for your energy anyways because the enemy is invulnerable or something, you can get a lot of value off of this. So kind of like Impossible Odds, if you have too much energy and you're about to swap, you might as well just use Jade Winds, because you'll at least get something out of it, a dodge or something. So yeah, it's really good. Those are all the stances. The sword skills, you want to be looking at mostly Sword 3 and Sword 5, because those do the most damage. If you're hitting a single target, the Sword 3 will do the most damage, but in team fights, it'll kind of go off to the side on different targets. So often you only want to use Sword 3 when you need the evade. So it's a 1.5 second evade, which is pretty good, or it's really good at chasing a target by itself. But yeah, it's not that good in team fights because it splits the damage up. However, Sword 4 does not split the damage up, so this is really good in team fights. So you do AoE damage, and yeah, it's pretty decent. It doesn't immobilize on the first hit, but it's only for 1 second, so it just gives a decent AoE damage, and it's just more of the same in my opinion. It's just like a damage skill. You have Death Strike, which is a damage skill, but this one also has a small 600 range Shadow Step on it. And how this works is you Shadow Step and you do a small attack, and then after you'll cast a larger attack, which you'll need to position it. So you do the small attack, and then it does the bigger attack right after. So oftentimes if your enemy is moving, they'll move out of your bigger attack. So what you need to do is really be good with your camera movement to stick to the target. A lot of times what people will do is they'll Death Strike as they're swapping into Glint. So they'll get the chill from the Glint Song of the Mists, and that'll help them to land the final Death Strike hit. And Death Strike hits for quite a bit of damage, so that's a really good skill to use in like a burst. And yeah, so 4 and 5, those are really heavy damage, But I mean, pretty much all your skills do heavy damage on the sword. Like the 2 skill is really good at hitting isolated targets. So it does like an AoE that does 2 hits, and it does chill, which helps you stick to your target. And if you only hit 1 target, it does extra damage. So this is sort of like Sword 3 as well. So Sword 2 and Sword 3 you want to be using on isolated targets. Same with Sword 5. Sword 4 you want to be using in like AoE situations. So Sword 4 and like all your facets are very good for AoE. And even like Shiro you want to be using Jade Winds in AoE situations. And then for single target situations, maybe use Phase Traversal, Sword 3, Sword 2, Sword 5. And yeah, that's pretty much the sword, right? Staff. Now, staff is a little bit controversial. Staff is a little bit controversial for some people because basically it's been nerfed, but I still think that staff is the best weapon for you to use as the Revenant's offhand, because it's sort of like the idea of short bow on thief. So you have all this energy and you want to be using that energy for the situation at hand. So if it's an aggressive situation, you want to be using that energy on sword. And if it's a kiting situation where you need to stall for time or wait until you can get your team to focus a target, you want to be defensive. So staff in that situation allows you to use your energy defensively because it gives you a 3-second block here, which also blinds, a 2-second block, which also blinds. It gives you Condi Cleanse, which by the way is the counter to Rev, so you want to have that, and healing. Your 2 skill gives you healing and weakness, and the 5 skill is an evade, which removes immobilize, and would also give you a CC. So I mean the utility on staff is just insane, and it allows you to use your energy for different situations, whereas a lot of people who have swapped over to mace and axe think that it's better because it allows you to chase, but the sword is already good at that, and you have a limited amount of energy, so it's not like you're going to be just using all your cooldowns and swapping and using all your cooldowns, because you're limited by energy in a lot of cases. So yeah, you want to be just sticking to sword when you want to do damage, and you want to be sticking to staff for the utility. And the auto attack on staff is actually pretty good too, so I honestly don't feel like there's any reason to not use staff. It's just such a good weapon. So yeah, there's that. The general playstyle of the Rev is you'll pretty much just put up 3 facets to get all these boons, you know, Fury, Swiftness, and Might. And then what you'll do is you'll pop your Shiro a few seconds before a fight starts. Maybe you're in combat, you can get some pooling of your energy. And then once you do go in, let me try to start with 50 energy to show a realistic situation. You'll obviously want to decide whether it's a safe enough positioning to use Phase Traversal, or you want to go in with something a little bit more conservative like a Sword 3. So if it's an aggressive situation like a +1, you'd go in and Phase Traversal and immediately Sword 2, and then auto attack with Impossible Odds up if you think that you're going to get the kill immediately. Another thing you can do is Phase Traversal into a Sword 3, and what that does is it makes it so that the enemy can't really counter pressure your advance. So like say the enemy is waiting for you to Phase Traversal on them, you immediately Unrelenting Assault, and you pretty much shrug off any counter pressure that they're going to do. And it's just a really good skill for hitting single targets still. So yeah, that's really good. And riposting shadows is another way that you can engage on someone. So like say you're against a necromancer and they're sitting on node and they've got marks all around the node. You can't use Phase Traversal on them because you'll hit all their marks. So what you can do instead is about face, and then I have a little guide on how to about face, but you'd about face and you'd reposting shadows into them, which would break all the marks and then put you in position to use sword 3 or something else to, get in there. So yeah, there's the phased reversal opener with the aggressive sword 2 opener, but then there's the phased traversal into sword 3, which is a little bit less aggressive, and then there's the more careful opener, which is reposting shadows into the enemy. And that's also really good because even though it uses up a lot of energy, it gives you a very kind of like safe opener. So yeah, that's really good. You can also open with glint sometimes. So what you can do is you have all your facets up, right? And you can go in with sword 5 and sword 4 into the immob. And then from that point, if they're immobilized, you can use the glint elite immediately and then knock them back. And then you want to use faceted elements while they're knocked back. And then you'd use burst of strength and then probably sword 2 and sword 3 or something like that. And then when they try to counter pressure you, what you can do is you can swap into Shiro, and you have a lot of evades that you can reposition or kite and then regain a little bit of your energy and then phased reversal back in. Let's talk about the heal skill on Revenant. So Facet of Light is probably the most broken skill on Revenant right now, and probably one of the more broken skills in the game right now, because it makes you immune to all incoming damage and converts that into healing. So not only does it heal you, but it makes that damage do nothing. So how you use this is you go very aggressively on your target while it's up, and they often can't really counter pressure you, because if they do, you can just turn this on and convert all their damage into healing. So the one thing that does counter this is CC. So like if someone CCs you, CCs don't do very much damage, and then they can just do nothing to you and not heal you. So you want to be careful around CCs, but if you're in like a team fight, there's a lot of ways that you can just get this to full heal you, and this gives you so much sustain. So like for example, a lot of skills that people cast and then they can't control afterwards will heal you. So like if you're fighting another revenant, they use sword 3 on you, they can't cancel that once they're in it. So you can use infused light and tank that damage without dodging and get, a really big heal. Anything that's like a ground targeted like necromancer well, you can just stand in the well while just being very aggressive and using your heal. So a lot of times what you want to do is you want to attack while you're in your infused light, because why wouldn't you? It's not like you need to evade because you're converting all that damage. Oftentimes evading is actually throwing because you're reducing the healing that you're giving yourself. And yeah, you just use it it's such an aggressive skill while also being such a high sustain skill at the same time. It's just so broken. And yeah, so for example, if I'm fighting a necromancer and they use tainted shackles on me, that skill is probably one of their highest damaging skills because it gives them really long duration torment. So what you can do is, if you see they have tainted shackles on you, you just tank the tainted shackles and you just keep hitting them, and as soon as it finishes on you, then you use infused light and then you just heal all the torment that they did to you. So it's just, you basically didn't have to kite during one of their strongest skills, and then you actually healed off of it, right? And it's just so strong because like normally people peel for themselves with the potential threat of damage, and since you can ignore that every 30 seconds is the cooldown, it just makes this build such a strong assassin. And the proper usage of this heal skill is the difference between a good and a bad revenant. So the revenant's role in a team is simply to get kills. Nothing else. You're not a 1v1er because revenants don't really have that much defense, so they can't really trade blows with many 1v1ers. However, they can do some 1v1s, but it's really a waste of your potential as a revenant to be in one place for too long because of how Shiro works. You're able to get so much map presence just by killing people and then moving on and then getting the next kill, because your Shiro port takes you so much around the map while also giving you a lot of your damage. So you're just losing out if you're sitting in 1v1s a lot. So you do want to be going for kills, and you do want to be creating outnumbered situations, because as a revenant you don't get punished as hard for letting your team be outnumbered, because you'll eventually get a lot of value off of your kills as a revenant. So in this match, as you can see, we've just got a bunch of kills at mid, and we're looking to cap mid. And meanwhile, the enemy team is probably going to decap our home node because, yeah, as you can see, they're decapping right now. And this is a Ellie. And we just wiped them at mid, so now we can 2v1 this. So all I need to do is just go in, be as aggressive, within reason as possible, and just get the kill, and then knock the body off the node, and then get out, go on to the next node. I see on the map that both their revs are going into mid on our necro, so I want to get there as fast as possible. I Shiro port in, and this is now an even fight. So I just +1 home, and then I got to mid in time because I just have that much mobility, and my kills are so fast that I don't really get punished that hard for, going into situations where I'm outnumbering. Unlike a thief, where I don't really want to be in those situations for that long. So we're getting these kills here, and I give myself a little bit of a super speed here just to get into the fight faster and pulse out the protection from Draconic Echo. And right here I'm pooling a little bit of energy, so I know that I want to do a big phase traversal into Sword 3 with Impossible Odds up. So you're only really able to do phase traversal into Sword 3, and then I'd be out of mana or out of energy. But since I waited there and did nothing with my energy, it allowed me to do a big burst there with Impossible Odds up. So that's kind of what pooling energy is. It's just saving your energy to use it all at once to get a little bit more of a like a burst, rather than a sort of situation where you're doing like one attack and then one attack. No, you want to like put all of your stuff on top of each other sometimes and stack it so that you can prevent the enemy from reacting to it or sustaining through it. So yeah, that's one thing that is really powerful for some revenants who are really good at doing combos, is if they pool their energy and then they do a combo. So here, I'm a little bit outnumbered, and I'm kiting around a little bit. The thing about Power Rev is, even though it's very easy to focus, it also has a lot of tools to not be focused. So a really good Revenant, as you can see, is going to survive outnumbered, even though their rotation requires that they don't be in those situations. So yeah. Here I land my glint heal, and then I walk back into the Mesmer's damage to take more, to heal more. And I'm just kiting around. It looks like they don't really have any kill potential on me at this point, so the Mesmer's going to leave. And I actually go back in to take the 1v1. As I said before, this isn't really the best thing of my time. This isn't the best rotation, but I'm taking it anyways because we have the rest of the map. And I just felt like it at the time. So I almost lost the 1v1 right there, but I glint heal just in time, and I end up deciding to leave because obviously, I shouldn't be here. But I get chased off by the Ellie, so he's playing very aggressively here for the kill, which is good because he should punish me. But I get a little support from my team here, and I just rotate out if I can. Looks like I might actually get the kill, though. If I get the kill, that can be really good, but it's not really necessary because I landed a Jade Winds there, so yeah, I'm going to get the kill. So my Scrapper is going to cap home, and I got a kill here, so I'm going to look to finish this off. As a Revenant, you don't really need to bleed kills as much, but you can because you have so much ability to port and cleave. So if someone does try to res, you just can risk. It's really risky for enemies to try to res against a rev because there's so much potential for you to snowball more kills off of that. So yeah, we're gonna chase this kill here. It looks like the buff is actually still up from 11:30, so I'm not really sure how long we've been fighting there, but I really don't want to be fighting there because Far is decapable, and I realize that my Necro is going to die, so I actually come back and try to help them by trying to cap the bell, and maybe that'll prevent them from attacking, so they have to interrupt it. But now we're in a 2v2 at the top, and their Condi Rev I'm fighting. Condi Rev is actually interesting because a lot of people think that Condi Rev is better than Power Rev, but in most situations, Power Rev doesn't really even perform worse than Condi Rev. I mean, like, a Power Rev can actually 1v1 a Condi Rev because of the resistance runes and, using your Glinteal very intelligently. And Condi Rev just has way less rotational ability. So oftentimes, like, I don't even see why you would ever play Condi Rev unless the enemy team has like a power counter comp. So yeah, I think that this build is way better than the Condi Rev build. But still, we're in a 1v1 with the Condi Rev. I'm full HP, and also that's another thing. The Condi Rev can't really kite from me because it's such a slow class. So if they're ever in a situation where I can get the kill on them, they don't really have a choice to kite out. But if I'm in the situation where they're about to get the kill on me, I can still probably leave. So I have the choice. And that's sort of like a thing that thieves have that's really advantageous to their class, is that they get to choose their fights. And even though revenants don't really have that choice that much, they still do have quite decent disengage with the Shiro and sword ports if they use them intelligently with targets. So instead of going to the top, like, we've been fighting at the top buff for like so long this match. I don't think, like, it spawned twice and we still haven't capped it. So I just decide that it's probably time for someone to go cap nodes because no one else is doing that. And so I go cap Far, and I go back to the bell to try to give my team a little, I keep calling it bell, but it's stillness. And I like to call all the secondary objectives just bell. But yeah, I go to mid instead to decap. I get the decap because the Condi Rev is paying attention to the warrior who was disengaging. And now I can take this 1v1. As I said, I feel like this is actually a favorable matchup for me, but it's going to end up being a 2v2 instead. And I get a little bit focused by the Lightning Rod Weaver, but I get a lot of unblockable damage into the Rev's shield block with the F2 in Shiro, which gives me a ton of pressure because it also, it removes boons. Now this is a 2v1, and we're pretty much going to get the kill because I have phase traversal to follow with the kill. And now from here, it looks like on the map we are going to be dying at home a little bit because our Necro's disengaging with low HP. And I decide to come here then, and looks like no one's chasing the Necro, so I go in very aggressively, use all of my skills because I notice that their Guardian is very low, so probably low on cooldowns. And I just auto attack in there, and I actually get one-shotted by Confusion. I think I got like Confusion bursted there, and then I pressed like a bunch of skills. So you gotta be careful with that still. But otherwise, we're gonna get these kills and snowball into the rest of the map. Caselli comes in here and just feeds for no reason. And the Condi Rev is coming in here too. But really they should be regrouping and probably killing whoever we have at mid. That's what I'm gonna do and prevent the scrapper at mid from dying. So I create this even fight. It's actually a 3v2 now. So we're just trying to get kills in this 3v2. I have a scrapper and like a weird like spellbreaker build on my team, so I don't think we can get the kill too easily here. Like they're kind of not running killing builds, so I have to play a little bit safe. My scrapper goes down here, and never go for a res as a revenant. You should always counter pressure unless you have someone else to help you res, because I mean oftentimes you can get the res by just downing the enemy, because they're so pressured that they have to deal with you, because revenants deal so much pressure, and the downstate. So a lot of times, yeah, you just want to just kill. It's very simple in down situations. You just cleave. You never res, you never stomp, you always cleave. So unless obviously your teammates are doing a coordinated res. So here I port back in to try to get the kill. They're both very low. My vengeance teammate dies, and now I'm 1v2. In this 1v2, I get it down because they're so low, and I go for a Shiro Elite stun into just auto attacking to do damage, but I'm gonna die eventually to the downstate rev and the torment, and my teammates revive and head to mid, and we get these kills. So that's very convenient for me. And we lost home meanwhile. I mean, we were 3v2, but we eventually got those kills, and all we need is one node anyways, so I'm just going to stay here and cap this, and we're just going to keep 2v1ing this, or now it's a 2v2, so it's fine though, because if I were a thief, I'd probably be leaving right now, but as a rev, I can take even fights because I have so much sustain on these builds. Even though, I'm easy to focus, but I have a high sustain, so if I'm fighting with my team, it's a pretty good situation. So yeah, you never really want to be alone as a rev. You can be outnumbered and have teammates near you, but if you're outnumbered and by yourself, then it's very difficult. So you have to be careful with that. And yeah, this game is pretty much over. They just need to hold mid, and I will stall the buff if anything. And yeah, that's pretty much this match. So in this match, I'll be showing you a little bit more of the rotational ability of the Revenant. So as usual, I'll be sharing boons to my allies before we group up and decide to fight. My thief is actually capping home, which is really bad because yeah, they're getting pushed by a prot holo, and there's absolutely no way they can win that. So instead, I decided to go into home and just kind of like clean up those kills to simplify the situation. And if we die at mid, then at least we have home and we don't lose mid and home, or it's just trying to go with what I can get a kill on the most reliably. So we get the kill on the ranger, and my thief has to leave. I don't know why, but he should stay here and get the kill with me because I can't 1v1 this. They come back, and we are chasing the prot holo. Now, obviously, prot holos are one of the hardest things to kill if you don't have a lot of CC to lock them down. So I use a lot of my CC, though, to attempt to, but it misses. And we do get it pretty low here, but it looks like... Okay, is that my necro? Yeah, that's my necro, actually. That's plussing me. But yeah, prot holos have a ton of sustain, and I use phase traversal to try to finish off the kill, but they have protection, and I haven't been able to remove it, and neither has my necro, so it's difficult to get the kill, but we're really close to it, and they've come into mid, which is actually good for us, because now the prot holo's in a team fight, which creates a favorable position for us, because now we're fighting with our team, and a prot holo doesn't really provide as much as we would in terms of damage. So yeah, I just put a lot of damage on top of those bodies there, and I land a really nice staff 5 here into the cleave. I use my blind to get full stacks of battle scars so I can resustain, and I just auto attack to try to get my team as much presence as possible. So we're gonna probably rally here. My team should be focusing the down to rally me, and I almost land a really good Jade Winds that would finish their whole team off, but it gets blinded, and I'm forced to use my heal here to try to survive long enough. I landed a really nice staff 5 there, but I'm getting focused by like 2 people here, so I have to kite. And I use my sword 5 there to kind of like peel for myself while also getting on the focus target. So that's one thing that revenants are really good at, is sticking to the target while also kiting almost at the same time. So it was a really good kill there for us. And my teammate dies off the node over towards our base. So I'm just trying to rally them as soon as possible by getting this kill. And they do get the rally, and we get the decap on mid, which is really good because Legacy mid is one of the hardest nodes to decap. And yeah, now we can just get this kill on this ranger. And he's invulnerable right now with Signet of Stone, but because I have so much lifesteal, I can kind of like go through that. So I knocked the body off the node, but I decided to kill it anyways because it's a ranger. And now I'm going to go home and try to +1 this Condi Revenant. Condi Revenants are actually very easy to +1 because, as I said, they don't really have good disengage. So I'm just going to sit here on top of this Condi Rev in this 2v1 and get the kill. However, he does kite off the node quite far, so we generally don't want to be chasing this far. So yeah, my ranger goes back to cap, and all I need to do really is to pressure them until my team gets the cap. The kill isn't really necessary. It's more about having control of the map. So yeah, we get the kill here, and now we have mid, we have home, and now we've got this kill. So we should try to just get kills wherever we can. We actually do get the kill on the ranger there with the lich form. So yeah, we've got map control now, and yeah, I just poured into far, and as you can see here, they were about to get this res because our team was outnumbered, but I came in so fast to get the cleave that this is no longer an outnumbered situation for our team. So it's just insane rotational ability there of the Revenant to allow us to keep that down. So now it looks like we're trying to play around a Condi Rev and a Pro Hollow, which is going to take a while to kill. I go for the unblockable damage during the shield block of the Rev there, and my Sword 3 looks like it bugged out there, so I lose a lot of momentum, and I'm not really sure who to target. Even though we're in a 3v2, but we land a nice Fear Ring on their Condi Rev, so I immediately just blow everything into him, and yeah, there's a lot of blinds on that, so I actually can't do much there, but if I had resistance up from my runes, I could have actually cleaved through that. But it didn't matter anyways because we're outnumbering, because the situation that I created from before and all the kills that I gained allowed us to outnumber that. And now we're just kind of pressing W and getting kills on whatever we can. The Necro is going to go for a res. It looks like they got a res or something, but it doesn't matter because we can keep just doing tons of damage. It's not like a thief where, oh, my steel's on cooldown, I can't really go for a burst now. No, you just kind of just keep doing damage no matter what. So in a way, resing gets countered by this, because if the enemy reses, they take a lot of damage to do so, and then you can get like a kill on the rest of their team if they land a res. So yeah, it's just really strong. We land a nice down on their Prolo here in the team fight, and there's really not much they can do about it. I'm going to finish off the kill so we can get the full cap. And yeah, as a Revenant, generally you want to be the first one to leave the fight after the last kill has been obtained. Normally as a thief, you'd rotate a little bit less greedily, so you'd let your allies kind of take 1v1s if they're in a favorable situation. But as a Rev, there's really no reason to do that. You just stay until you get the final kill, and then as soon as you get the final kill, like the person's downed, you leave, go somewhere else, get more downs, let your teammates deal with the downstate body. And if it becomes like a risky situation where they're going to try to res that down body, you can always port back in and just cleave it. So I decide to play actually safe there and just cleave the body out, because there's really no reason not to, because there's no risk in cleaving that out, and I can just create an outnumbered situation for my team, even though I'm not making use of the respawn timers. So I see here my Necro is dead at home, and we're in like a 2v3 here, but I decided to go in anyways just to get a little bit of pressure on the enemy so that I peel for my allies so they can get out. I'm actually in a... Is this a 1v2 or a 1v3? It's a 1v2, and I'm just stalling as much as I can. We actually lost mid, so this is kind of bad that I stayed here. I should have just stayed at mid, but I can survive. And yeah, so there's a really good kite spot that I could use here, but instead I just poured into mid and created a 3v1 on mid by just using the target that my team gave me at mid. And now we just outnumber this, and we just created an outnumbering situation from an outnumbered situation because of the insane mobility of Revenant and the survivability as well. So we don't really have much of the map because we had to leave home, but we did get mid, and now we can just go into home and snowball that now. I see that the Necro is really low, so I go for a basically a sword combo on them, and I see that they're pretty much going to die, so I try to knock them off the node so that they can cap that without stomping it, so they can make use of the bleed timer. And now my Necro is at mid, outnumbered, but I get there in time so that they're not taking too much pressure, and I try to just CC and get a little bit of presence for them. The Necro kites off the node, so what I do is I stand on the node to try to give my teammate a little bit of pressure, but I do get focused instead. So what we tried to do there was we tried to trade aggro. So the Necro was being focused for a while and holding the node until I could get there, and then he got off the node and I stood on the node, and they're not going to chase the Necro unless the Necro is really close to being killed because they want to get the decap, right? So they're going to focus me instead. However, I didn't really have many cooldowns to get out, so we didn't trade very well. Like, he got off and I got on, but then I didn't get off in time, and there were a lot of people focusing me. So that was kind of a sticky situation, and we lost a lot of the map because I died. So you got to be careful with that. You want to be not trying to be outnumbered too much because it can be, you can die from it. Here, though, my ranger is dead and we're 1v2, so I'm just going to kite again because I don't want to die, and I'm not really too confident that I can leave through the roads and get to mid without dying. So I just go to this kite spot to be very safe, and yeah, they're about to leave, so I'm going to push into this 1v1 again, but it looks like, is that 2 Condi revs actually? Yeah, it might be 2 Condi revs. So they're going to try to chase me, and it looks like there's a third as well. But yeah, they're not going to get the kill on me because I have my glint heal up, and I have resistance, and I'm just going to run into my base at this point because, if my team can win a 4v2 on the rest of the map, then yeah, we'll win the game. So the rev actually knocks me into my own base, so that's very good there. And they're about to kill my gate, so I have to be very careful here. They could go Lord. If they get Lord, they'd be in the lead, so I have to be very careful in this situation. So I think that's the Ranger is going for the Lord while the Condi Rev chases me, but I have my Glint heal up now because I kited for long enough. And I'm actually going to go in towards my Lord because the Lord's going to peel for me. And the Ranger takes a lot of CC here, and I use my Glint heal to full heal, basically. Well, not full heal, but heal up. And yeah, the guards just basically make quick work of them when I land all my CCs. So yeah, we pretty much have won off of that because we've been outnumbering on the map for that long. And yeah, just the power of Revenant there is just so evident because you can survive outnumbered and still get kills. You can turn kills around from nothing almost if your team, the enemy team, uses too many cooldowns to try to kill you. It's just the issue with Revenant is if you have a really good player on the class, it's just so busted. And if you there's an analogy to this in Hearthstone where the Grim Patron deck, it was one of the hardest decks to play in the game, but it had a very low win rate in ranked because it was just too hard to play. And that's kind of what Revenant is like. It's pretty hard to play, but when someone gets on that class, or on this build specifically, it can become a monster. And in a way, it's not very interactive because you can create outnumbered situations. And as you saw me, I created outnumbered situations pretty much all that match for my team, and I wasn't even playing Thief. So yeah, it seems very uninteractive to people when a really good Revenant gets on the class because they can snowball the map so hard, and they don't really get punished for outnumbering as much because they, as soon as they get the kill, they port into the next place and now they're outnumbering there. And they can get kills faster than any other class almost. So yeah. It's a very fun build though, and I really like it. So yeah. Like this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below if you think Revenant is fine, because ANET should not balance for high tier gameplay. It should balance for, all tiers of gameplay, or you think Rev isn't actually that good in high tier maybe. Yeah, let me know what you guys think about the balance of this class, or just in general, because I actually really think that this build should stay in the meta. I just think maybe a little bit of a nerf on the Shiro port, because it gives you, too much of a, it gives you unblockable quickness and a port for one skill. I think it's a little bit bloated. Maybe remove the quickness, and then I would say maybe the glint heal is a little bit too strong, because for a good player, it allows you to be too aggressive, and the potential that it gives you is just too much. So maybe capping out the amount of healing that it can give you, so it doesn't full heal you in a lot of situations where you can control the damage that's being dealt to you, and that would make it a lot easier to focus revs, which is their account. So yeah.